Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and thanks for joining me. Back in August of 2020, I hiked the Vanguard Way, a 66-mile trail that goes from East Croydon in London to the south coast and to the town in New Haven. Coming up are my top 7 tips for hiking this trail. So tip number 1 is have a map, download the GPX file and add it to your phone and use both of them. The one challenge that I really ran into on the Vanguard Way was finding the trail. It wasn't very well waymarked, it was barely signposted, and I got lost or off the trail a lot. So use them in combination. Use one when it's easier, use the other when you're not sure, but I would highly recommend taking both and using both. So tip number 2, know where to stop for water. Unlike the South Downs Way, there are no water taps that you can rely on. You either have to carry everything with you or ask in a pub or a shop if they don't mind filling your water bottles up for you. This, of course, is a bigger deal if you're backpacking the trail versus doing a day hike, but it's always useful to know where you need to stop. And from East Croydon to basically Oxted, there are very limited water places to stop. There are a couple of pubs, but when I walked by them, it was too early to go in and ask. And occasionally a church will have a water tap outside. But it's always important to know, especially on a hot day, where your water is going to be coming from. Tip number 3. The Vanguard Way is 66 miles long and it is not a flat trail. One of the resources I looked at when I was planning this hike was that it was reputed to be a moderately level trail and good for a novice. I would disagree with this. There's an awful lot of elevation up and down that made it a lot more difficult and challenging than I thought it was going to be. So I'd actually planned a 4-day itinerary around the idea that this was not going to have too much elevation gain and loss, and I found it a little bit of a struggle. 66 miles in 4 days was quite a lot. So I would definitely plan, especially for somebody who isn't used to doing long distance trails, is to do it in more of a 5 to 6 day itinerary, which would make it enjoyable, it would make it easy, and it would make it very, very pleasant. Tip number 4, log camping is possible along the entire length of this trail, but it isn't easy. Initially you're going to be in London and the suburbs, and then once you get out of that, it's a lot of farm fields. It is doable. You have to think outside the box a little bit of where you're camping. There are a few spots here and there in the trees and in the corners of farm fields you could probably get away with, but on the whole, it's not the easiest trail to wild camp. I did end up doing one wild camp. I ended up staying with my sister one night, and I also ended up booking a campsite, which I highly recommend doing, and there are definitely enough off of the trail that are cheap that would make it recommended. So highly recommend looking at campsites as well as the possibility of wild camping if you're backpacking the whole trail. So tip number 5. Read up on the history of this trail. It goes through a lot of interesting areas that have a lot of really unique history. I didn't do enough of it when I was out there. I read about the history of the trail and of the vanguards themselves, read a little bit about the areas that I was going through, but I didn't do nearly enough research on what I was seeing and where I was going through. So I would highly recommend doing some reading, learning about the trail, learning about the history of the areas, and that way you're armed with some knowledge when you go through an area. It really brings the trail alive. Tip number 6. If you want to do this as day hikes, you may need a car or somebody with access to a car who is willing to drop you off. This trail doesn't have a whole lot of great public transport links, especially after Forest Row and before you reach Alfriston. It is limited, there is some, but you really will have to research on how you want to work it. So it is there, but a car definitely makes it easier. Tip number 7. Be prepared for a lot of road walking. Now, ironically, most of the road walking was not through the London suburbs. It was in an area that I wasn't expecting it, around Alfriston, before Alfriston, actually mostly around where I was camping from a campsite, and I was not expecting it. It was really hard on the legs, really hard on the feet, and so just be prepared that there will be a lot of road walking on this trail. However, saying that, there are some really beautiful areas where it goes through the Ashdown Forest, and ironically, like I said, it goes through the suburbs of London. It goes through some of these beautiful woodlands that I think you will thoroughly enjoy. And finally, a quick bonus tip. If you are not planning on camping or wild camping this trip, look into accommodation. There are not a huge amount of towns that this trail goes through. The first trail you're really going to hit that actually has any kind of accommodation is Oxted, followed by Edenbridge, and then really not much until Alfriston after Forest Row. So just give that some thought. It is possible, it is doable, but you might have to do a little bit of research about where you want to stay. So that's it for my top 10 tips for hiking the Vanguard Way. I hope you found some value in it, and if you did, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Thanks for joining us. If you would like to see more content, hit that subscribe button, and we'll hope to see you on the next video.